Okay, Assalamu alaikum. So this is the demo that we talked about in today's class, and this will help you in getting tomorrow's lab done. So tomorrow's lab is about the hazard relationship, and then it also talks about shallow and deep copy of objects. Okay. So let's talk about let's not talk about that. Let's see how to implement that. So we will create a few classes, and we'll create the hazard relationship between those classes, and then we'll demonstrate uh, how does the hazard relationship work, and how can we or how should we write the copy constructor so that if we are trying to create a new object based upon an existing object, that copy takes place correctly. Okay, so this is basically to accompany lab number 7, and let us create our classes. So this is about has a relationship. Okay, so let us call the project like that. Okay, so first of all, we will declare our classes, and we'll do that declaration in a separate header file. So let us create and add that header file to this project. Let us include it in the debug and release versions of this project. Let us save it in this project folder, and as usual, let us name it as my classes, although you can name it as you can give it some other name as well. Okay, so here we are going to create three classes. Okay, so we'll go with the example of a car. Okay, so a car has an engine and a transmission. So let's create an engine class and transmission class, and then let's create the car class. Okay, so let us do that. So let us first define the engine class. So this is how the engine class would look. Class say engine. Okay, okay, class engine, and then class transmission, transmission, and then class car. Okay, car. Okay. We'll try to keep our classes as simple as possible because I want to demonstrate, we don't want to demonstrate the detailed implementation of these classes, but rather we want to learn about hazard relationship and shallow and deep copy. Okay, so let us declare just one data member, or say two data members for this class. So one, it will have one member data member of the engine class would be displacement. Okay, displacement may mean the size of the engine cylinders. So for example, in common words, we say that this car has an engine of 1500 cc or 1600 cc or 1800 cc. So this property will basically tell about the size of the engine cylinder. And then say let us have another data member, and that is class the engine's serial number. Okay, say for example the engine's serial number. Okay, okay, and we are going to have another data member, and that would be say static int count. Okay, or total engines, total number of engines. We want to have it to have this, or let us not have it. Let us keep things simple. Okay, then we want to have our constructor for the engine class. So this is our constructor, and the constructor we'll have the default constructor and say we want to have the overloaded constructor. Inside the overloaded constructor, like, we can create an engine of a specific size. Okay, so here you can say size int s, so that would be the size of the engine cylinder. Okay, how many cc? 1300 cc, 1800 cc, 2000 cc, something like that. Then we will have a method to get the displacement of the engine. So if we want to know कि इसका size क्या है, so we can call this method, and will have a method to get the serial number, get serial number of the engine. Okay, so these are the methods that we are going to have. Now let's come to the transmission class. So transmission, say for example, it will have these two characteristics. Say for example, it will, number one, it will have int speeds, like is it a 4-speed transmission, 5-speed transmission, and then bool is manual. Okay, bool manual. So if it's a manual transmission, it would be true. If it is an automatic transmission, this would be false. Or we can have, say, bool automatic. Okay, so let us have this thing. Then we'll have public data members, public member functions. One would be the default constructor. Okay, then we'll have the overloaded constructor transmission. Here we will specify what uh, mm, here we can specify, like, whether it is automatic or not, and the number of speeds like that it can have. So here we can specify, say, bool bool is auto. Okay, and then we can have the number of speeds, int speeds. Okay, or int gears or speeds. Let us say speeds. Okay, because each gear corresponds to a certain speed or speed limit or something like that. Okay, so then we want to have methods to get the number of speeds, like how many speeds, is it a 4-speed or 5-speed transmission, and we also want to know, say, uh, whether this is automatic or not. Bool is automatic. Okay, so we want to return that as well. Achha ji. So this is our transmission class. We can write the implementation code for these classes, like we can define these classes. And so let us add another source file. So this would be our my classes source file. So here we can provide implementation for these methods. So first of all, I want to uh, like define these classes, the engine class and the transmission class, and after that we'll implement the car class. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is we need to provide implementation for the engine class and then the transmission class. Okay, so I'm just copying these methods here, and here I need to include number one, I need to include IOStream header file because we'll be doing some printing. Then we need to include the my classes header file. Okay, then we need to specify that we'll be using namespace std. Okay, so first of all we need to implement the default constructor of the engine class. Okay. Okay. Then let me define the signature for the remaining classes. This is the overloaded constructor of the engine class. This is the get displacement function, get serial number function. Okay. So here we can specify the bodies for these member functions. Okay, so this is the default constructor. Inside the default constructor, we will print out a message. Or first, let us specify some values, default values for these properties. So whenever we create an engine, we would be creating a 1300 cc engine. So displacement would be say 1300, and the other serial number. So serial number, that should come as an argument. Okay, so if we create a default engine, so we don't want the serial numbers to be like similar. Serial numbers must be unique. So this is important. Okay. Similarly, in the overload constructor, we'll specify the engine size. Say engine size, and the second thing that we'll specify is the serial number. Okay, serial in serial. So we'll try to create engines mostly using this constructor, the overloaded constructor. Okay. So ideally this is how we should be doing it. Okay, here like serial number should be unique, but let us say here we assign some value to the serial number. Let us create this this engine. Okay, so say the engine that we create using the default constructor, its serial number would be say for example 1947. Say for example that would be its value. Okay, and we want to print out a message as well. Cout. We want to say that the default constructor, or you can have a very elaborate message, a 1300 cc engine with serial number, this has been created. Okay, so you can say uh, displacement, this will come here, 1300 cc engine with serial number, and then the serial number has been created. Okay, so we'll have this elaborate message that a 1300 cc engine with serial number this has been created. Okay, now this is the overloaded constructor. So in the overloaded constructor we'll have the same code, Acha, but slightly different. Now the engine size comes here through an argument engine size, and the serial number is coming here through this argument serial number. Okay, so one of the students had a problem with his code, and the problem apparently was in the operator function, but when we looked deep in the code, so we found out that the problem wasn't with the operator function but with something very basic, and this is that something very basic. So here you should know, like, this is the right hand side of the assignment operator, this is the assignment operator. Now this quantity is on the left hand side of the assignment operator, and this is on the right hand side of the assignment operator. Now the way the assignment operator works is whatever variable or expression or constant is on the right hand side of the assignment operator, the value of that variable or constant or expression is copied into whatever it is whatever it is on the left side of the assignment operator. Now this is something very basic that I assume that you'll know, but at times you make mistakes in things like these as well. So this thing is completely incorrect. Engine size is equal to displacement. If you do something like this is completely incorrect. Why? Because here you're expecting the user will, when the user is invoking the overloaded constructor of the engine class, the user will provide the engine size through this argument, and you want to assign this engine size that is provided by the user to the class attribute displacement. Okay, so this is how it should be. If you are doing it this way, so ये फिर आप उल्टा काम कर रहे हैं, ये तो आप आर्गुमेंट को डिस्प्लेसमेंट की वैल्यू असाइन कर रहे हैं, ठीक है, जिसका कोई फ़ायदा भी नहीं है, क्योंकि दिस इज़ पास बाय वैल्यू. हमारे पास engine size मेन प्रोग्राम से जो भी आ रहा है उसकी कॉपी यहाँ पे आ रही है in the variable engine size, and you are just modifying that copy through this statement. You are just modifying that copy, you are assigning the displacement attribute of the engine class to the engine size variable. Okay, so it is useless, there is no utility in something like this. Whereas this is what you should be doing. We displacement is an attribute of the engine class, and we want to modify it or change it or assign it the value that has been provided by the user, and that value is in this variable. So we assign the class attribute displacement the value of this variable. Okay? So this value is assigned to whatever is on the left of this assignment operator, and that is the displacement attribute. तो ये बहुत ही सिंपल सी चीज़ें हैं जिसको हम एज्यूम करते हैं कि यू वुड नो, एंड समटाइम्स यू डोंट नो, एंड देन यू लैंड इनटू ट्रबल. ठीक है, हेयर वी से कि अ डिस्प्लेसमेंट एन इंजन, ठीक है, इसको एन होना चाहिए, और या अच्छा अ डैश सी सी. सो हेयर अ डिस्प्लेसमेंट सी सी इंजन विथ सीरियल नंबर डैश हैज़ बीन क्रिएटेड. ठीक है, और यहाँ पे अगर आप मेंशन करना चाहते हैं कि दिस वाज द ओवरलोड कंस्ट्रक्टर, तो यहाँ पे आप ये वर्ड ऐड कर दें कि ये कस्टम इंजन है, ठीक है, यूज़र की स्पेसिफिकेशंस के मुताबिक बना है. तो here you can mention that. Now the get displacement function, it would just return the value of the engine's displacement. ठीक है, return displacement. And similarly, the get serial number function would return the serial number. It won't do anything else. Return serial number. अच्छा, हो गया. Okay, so this is the implementation or definition of the engine class. Now let us define the transmission class. ठीक है, so transmission class जो है, it is we have to implement the constructor of the transmission class. So this is how we need to do the scope resolution, and we need to do this scope resolution for all the member functions of the transmission class. ठीक है, this is the overload constructor, this is the get speed, and is automatic function. ठीक है, अच्छा जी. Now let us implement or define these functions. अच्छा जी, so let us create these blocks. Okay, so what would the default constructor of the transmission class do? ठीक है, अच्छा जी. So the default constructor would assign default values to the attributes of the transmission class. So what are those attributes? Those attributes are, number one, speed, like how what are the number of gears. Basically, this is the number of gears in this transmission. So a 5-speed transmission usually has 5 gears, at least 5 gears, and then we specify whether it is automatic or not. So by default, say we are creating uh, manual transmissions. Okay, so automatic by default, automatic is false. Okay, and the number of speeds, so by default we are creating 5-speed manual transmissions. Okay, and let us print out this message. Okay, so let's say dash, so this would be speeds. Okay, speeds, a dash, a 5 speed, 6 speed, whatever the value of speed is, and then we'll say manual transmission has been created. A dash speeds manual transmission has been created. So this is what the message should be in the default constructor. In the overloaded constructor, let us copy this code. Okay, paste it here. So automatic, this property is set by this variable, this argument. So this is the value, the user will specify value for it here. So we will assign it to the attribute automatic. Okay, so this is auto, and the number of speeds, so that will be specified by the user, which will be copied into the variable s, and we want to assign it to the attribute speeds. Okay, so here we'll have two possibilities. If is auto, if is auto is true, okay, so the message will be different. If that is not the case, then the message will be different, else it would be different. So if it is true, that means the transmission is automatic, else the transmission is manual. ठीक है, और यहाँ पे let us differentiate कि जी ये overloaded constructor था, ठीक है, 2, या यहाँ पे लिख लेते हैं overloaded, ठीक है, यहाँ पे भी लिख लेते हैं overloaded, ताकि we know कि कौन सा constructor call हुआ है. Like we would know, but the output shows as well. अच्छा, get speeds, so this would return the attribute speeds. This would return the attribute speeds, and अच्छा जी, then we have क्या है, is automatic. So here we would return the value of is auto. So if it is true, you'll get true. If it is false, no, not is auto, it is automatic. Automatic. So उसकी value return कर देते हैं, ठीक है. So now the implementation of these two classes, engine and transmission class, that is complete. Now let us create our car class, ठीक है. Now a car has an engine and a car has a क्या कहते हैं, transmission, ठीक है. A car has an engine and a car has a transmission. So that is what we need to do in this class. So we are going to create has a relationship between the car class and the engine and transmission class. How are we going to do that? So we are only going to create two attributes of the car class, and those attributes would basically create this relationship between these two classes. So when we say engine E, okay, so E is an object. E is an object. So now car has an engine E. Okay, so we have created has a relationship between the car class and the engine class. When we say transmission T, so now we have created has a relationship between the car class and the transmission class. We can say car has an engine, car has a transmission. Okay, and remember, like, these are objects, and for these objects the default constructor would be invoked. For these objects the default constructor would be invoked, ठीक है, default constructor would be invoked. अच्छा, now let us have let us have a couple of functions for this car. So say for example we want to know what is the engine size of this car. Okay, so we can have something like this. अच्छा, these cars, these are, ये जो car है, this car would be created with default settings like default engine होगा, और उसको आप शायद इतना मॉडिफाई ना कर सकें फिलहाल. ठीक है, वी कैन हैव फंक्शंस फॉर दैट. वो वी कैन हैव दोज फंक्शंस एज वेल. अच्छा, लेट्स डू अ वेरी सिंपल इम्प्लीमेंटेशन. वो जितना आप इसको गहराई में लेके जाते जाएंगे तो वो उतना वो होता जाएगा. Let us keep things as simple as possible. So let's have a default constructor for our car. This would be a default constructor. And let us have an overloaded constructor. We can have an overloaded constructor as well, where you can provide a custom engine and custom transmission. Okay? So we can say engine E1 and transmission T1. Okay? So we can have this car. Sure. And then say we want to these are the constructors. Say then we want to have function to get the engine size. Okay? So we want to have a function get engine size, and this is function for the car class. Okay? And then we want to have say get engine serial number. Okay? Engine serial number. And say finally we want to say int get get speeds. Okay? So we want to know the number of speeds in the transmission. Okay? Achha. So let us keep our car class like this for the moment. We need to define these member functions of the car class. So let us define these member functions. Achha. This is the default constructor of the car class. This is how it's going to look here. This is the next we have the overloaded constructor. Then we have the engine size function. Okay. Achha ji. Then we have the get engine serial number function, and then we have the get transmission speeds function. Okay. Achha ji. So let's first implement the simple functions. Simple functions कौन से हैं? ये है जी. For example, get engine size. So the car has engine E, so we'll say E dot get displacement. ठीक है? And we need to return this value. We need to return this value. So we can say return E dot get displacement. So the car has an attribute engine, which is the object E, and we call this method for the object E. Okay? Achha. How do we get the engine serial number? So here we can say return E dot get. Achha ji. E dot get serial number. So we call the get serial number method for the engine object, and that will allow us to return the engine serial number for this car. Okay. अच्छा जी. Just a second. Okay. So the get speeds method, this would basically return the get speeds value for the transmission object. So a car has the transmission object T, and we call the get speeds method for the transmission object T, and we run that value. Okay, so this is a very good example of how has a relationship works. Now here inside the default constructor, okay, so what are we going to do in the default constructor? So if you see, like, the attributes of the car class are the engine object and transmission object, and these objects will be instantiated using their default constructors. Okay, so the default constructors are these. So even if you don't do anything in, these are the default construction for the engine class, and this is the default constructor for transmission class. So even if you don't do anything here, those objects will be created. Okay, so here you can print this message, uh, a car with uh, with um, e with a e dot get displacement. Okay, with a dash cc engine and t dot get speeds dash speed manual transmission create. Okay, so we can have this message printed in the default constructor. In the overloaded constructor, we are basically specifying values for the attribute engine and transmission. So we can say E is equal to E1 and T, sorry, it is not E. Yeah, it is E. E and T. Okay, that is fine. And T is equal to T1. So we can do that. And then we can have this message printed. Okay, we can have this message printed here. Actually, okay, this is fine. Now let us test this code. Let us create a car. Just a car object. Well, first we need to include our header file, otherwise we'll get an error. Hash include my classes. Okay, so let us just create a car object C and do nothing. So we just create a car object C. Let's see what happens. Okay, and let us do something else. Let us build and run it. G. Okay, so this is the handout for today's lab. Okay, now in this handout, like, basically the idea was that art labs और art labs में हमने we have to squeeze all of object oriented programming into just these 8 labs. So you're doing multiple things in this lab and they may not be that related. One is multiple inheritance. So you know inheritance, and you have, I hope you have done multi-level inheritance, where you have a parent class, then you derive another class out of it, and then you create another class, and so on. So I hope you have created the shape hierarchy, and in the shape hierarchy you have done multiple inheritance, but that is all single inheritance. Like, every child class or every class in that hierarchy has a maximum of one direct base class. So if a class has maximum of one direct base class, so this is single inheritance. In multiple inheritance, you have multiple base classes. You have more than one direct base class. You have more than one direct base class. So that is multiple inheritance. Now we have talked about the situation where, for example, this situation. So we have, say for example, the person class in this very simple hierarchy. It has these data members, name, age, and print method. Then we have the student class, which is a derived class of the person class, and then we have faculty class, which is also a derived class of the person class, and then we have a teaching assistant class. And the teaching assistant class, it is basically a derived class of both the student class and faculty class, because the teaching assistant is both a student and some sort of faculty member at the same time. He or she is assisting in a particular course. So in this particular case, the teaching assistant class is inheriting attributes and behavior from two different classes. It has two direct base classes. So this is, we call this as multiple inheritance. This is multiple inheritance, okay? So the first thing that you need to do is you need to implement this class hierarchy. And I guess you get some help, you get enough help from my side. So you have this thing, this code. If it, like, you can try it, and if there are problems, one idea is like, this is supposed to be the seventh lab, so you should be able to handle some minor problems. If not, so you can always like ask about those problems. Okay? अच्छा, but try this code and try implementing that hierarchy. ठीक है? या आपने already जो shape hierarchy अगर फर्ज के you have implemented, and you can see there a connection where one class can implement. So if this code doesn't work, it would work. I have tested this code और उसके बाद मैंने यहाँ पे इसको paste किया. So if you do it properly, it should work. ठीक है? अच्छा, this is one thing. The other thing that we wanted to do in this lab, uh, again, this is just a matter of necessity. It is not a matter that these things are very closely related. No, that is not the case. These things are closely related. For example, has a relationship or composition and shallow and deep copy. These are closely related. Okay. So the next thing that I ask you to do is to implement has a relationship. And how do I ask you to do it? So again, we have talked about this example. We say that we have a car object, and the car has a transmission and an engine object. Okay? Let me see if we have a figure for that. Yeah, we have. So we have a car object, and the car has an engine and a transmission. So the car object, it has a relationship with these two other classes. Car class has a relationship with the engine class and the transmission class. So a car has an engine, a car has a transmission. Okay? So in the other task, I ask you to do that, to create this relationship. Now I have done that as well, and yesterday, like, I recorded the demo for this lab, but it was a partial recording, and then I didn't find the time to complete it, so that's why you didn't have the demo. And today I have to uh, give some students an exam, so I was working on that exam. So that's why I didn't have enough time. Acha. So let me show the implementation that I have done. It is very simple implementation of this hierarchy. Okay? So these are my classes. So this is my engine class. I have tried to simplify it so that I can like only show you the has a relationship. So this engine class has two attributes. One is the displacement and the other is serial number. Okay. Now displacement means कि engine का size क्या है, 1600 cc है, 1300 cc है, 800 cc है, 2000 cc है, 4000 cc है. अच्छा, we didn't add fuel type के ये gasoline है, diesel है, ठीक है, hydrogen है, hybrid है. We have left out all those details. So I wanted to make or keep things simple. Asha, these are the attributes, and this is the default constructor, this is the overloaded constructor. It gets two input parameters. One is the engine size, the other is the serial number. हर engine का एक serial number होता है. Serial number should be unique, ideally, but like here, we would have trouble maintaining the serial number as unique. ठीक है, फिलहाल इसको रहने दें. फिलहाल we are interested in other things. Then it has this method int get displacement. If you want to know the size of your engine, 1800 cc या 2000 कितने हैं, तो you can get the displacement. You can get the engine serial number. Then we have the transmission class. In the transmission class, we have two attributes. One, the number of speeds. Every transmission that you buy, तो वो 5 speed होती है, 4 speed होती है. It can be manual, automatic, ठीक है? And there can be other attributes to it. So the number of speeds, ठीक है, या gears की तादाद या gear ratios जो possible हैं. So you can name it differently, but at the end, what matters is कि ये कितनी speed ranges को, how many speed ranges does this transmission support, ठीक है? It has effect on fuel efficiency and all that. So again, so what are the number of speeds possible with this transmission, and a Boolean attribute automatic. If it is true, that means the transmission is automatic. If it is false, that means the transmission is manual. Here default constructor and overloaded constructor for the transmission class, and then get speeds and is automatic method for this class as well. ठीक है? अच्छा. Now these are two classes, engine and transmission, and this is the car class, which is composed of an engine and a transmission and some other objects as well, but we have only restricted ourselves to engine and transmission. Okay, so how do you create that relationship that has a relationship when you declare one of the attributes of the class, the car class, to be an engine object? So you have created the has a relationship between car and engine class. When you declare the other attribute to be the transmission, so you have created the other second attribute, second relationship, this. So by declaring objects of these classes, we create that relationship. Okay? Inside the car class, by declaring attributes, by declaring the attributes of the car as objects of some other classes, the engine class and transmission class, we create this has a relationship. Okay? तो ये रिलेशनशिप आप यूँ क्रिएट करते हैं. कैसे क्रिएट करते हैं? इस कार क्लास का एक एट्रीब्यूट आपने एक engine ऑब्जेक्ट बना लिया. दिस इज एन engine ऑब्जेक्ट. इट इज नॉट अ पॉइंटर. ठीक है? It is not a pointer or a reference. It is an object. So you should keep this in mind. Okay, this is an object. Similarly, this is also an object. It is not pointed to an object. ठीक है? It is an object, a complete object by itself. This is the, so by making these declarations, we create or establish has a relationship between car and engine and transmission. Okay? So this is how you do it. Now this is the default constructor of the car class. This is the next one is the overloaded constructor. Like you can create an engine, a custom engine and a custom transmission, and based upon those two things you can create a new car object. You can do that. And then we have this these methods: get engine size, get engine serial number, and get speeds. Okay? Again, this is not complete. Like I was working on this demo, but since you need it, so we will discuss as much as I have written, and then I'll leave the rest to you. Okay, so you should be able to try some things on your own as well. Now let us go to and have a look at the implementations. This is the implementation for these classes. This is the constructor of the engine class. So inside the constructor, we are creating by default 1300 cc engines हम बना रहे हैं, ठीक है? And serial number is 1947. Again, this I just gave it some value, and then we also print this message: a 1300 cc engine with serial number 1947 has been created. Okay, so whenever an engine object is created, this these two attributes would be initialized with these values, and this message would be printed. Okay, this is the overloaded constructor for the engine class, and here you are getting two attributes. The engine size, के 2000 cc का engine बनाए या 3000 cc का engine बनाए, and the engine serial number. So you get these attributes as arguments, and you initialize the class attributes using these arguments. ठीक है? And again, yesterday one of your class fellows approached me, and his code was otherwise fine, but he was making a very fundamental mistake. You should know the behavior of every operator. Now this is the assignment operator. The assignment, what does the assignment operator do? It takes whatever is on the right hand side calculates its value and copies that value to whatever is on its left hand side. So engine size की जो भी value है उसको copy कर दिया जाएगा into displacement. That is what you want to do. You want to initialize the attribute displacement, the displacement attribute of the engine class with this particular input argument. That is what you want to do. You don't want to do something like this. यानी this does not make any sense. ठीक है कि आप engine size को initialize करें या value assign करें displacement of the engine की. It does not, like, it is completely useless thing to do, because this is a value type, a variable of type value. It is a copy. Even if you change it, it does not affect anything. ठीक है यानी इसका जो इस चेंज का जो इस स्टेटमेंट का जो असर है, it is just related to the, it is just limited to the copy. इवन जो मेन प्रोग्राम में अगर आप किसी वेरिएबल को यहाँ पास ऑन कर रहे हैं उस पर भी कोई इफेक्ट नहीं हो रहा है इसका. So this thing does not make any sense. इसका मतलब ये है कि आप displacement को copy कर रहे हैं into this argument. ठीक है So displacement would remain unchanged, uninitialized. So be very careful, और आपको यानी these things should be very clear to you कि ये जो assignment operator है इसका how does it behave. So it evaluates the expression on the right hand side and it copies that value to the variable on the left hand side. So on the left hand side you must always have a variable, something that can be assigned a value to. Okay? So you cannot have a constant here, you cannot have a function here, you cannot have any type that is not appropriate जिसमें ये value copy की जा सके. G, this is the default constructor. This is the default constructor. The default constructor does not receive any input arguments. So here you specify some constant value, assign some constant value to the attributes. Displacement को मैंने 1300 की value दी, serial number को मैंने 1947 की value दी. ठीक है? So we initialize the attributes of this engine using these arguments, and then we print के displacement CC custom engine with serial number this has been created. These methods are very simple. Here we return the displacement of the engine and the serial number of the engine. So these are simple. Now this is the default constructor for the transmission class. Here by default we are creating manual transmissions, and the transmissions are 5-speed transmissions. ठीक है So जैसे बड़ी गाड़ियों में आजकल जितनी भी हैं ट्रांसमिशन, बाज़ में ऑल्टस में भी 6 स्पीड है, लेकिन यूजुअली इट इज़ 5 स्पीड. मेहरान वगैरह में 4 स्पीड है, और ऑटोमेटिक जो ट्रांसमिशन है उसमें 8 स्पीड, नई जो गाड़ी आ रही है उसमें 8 स्पीड की ट्रांसमिशन है. ठीक है सो यू शुड हैव सम आइडिया ऑफ दीज थिंग्स एज वेल. So the default is we create a manual transmission, a 5-speed manual transmission. That is what the default is. ठीक है Again we are initializing the attributes. The attributes are on the left of the assignment operator. ठीक है Now this is the overloaded constructor. Here we specify okay, what type of transmission do we want. Do we want manual or automatic, and how many gears do we want in gear ratios do we want in those transmissions. ठीक है So automatic we assign it the value of is auto. अच्छा and then speeds को हम assign कर देते हैं s की value. अच्छा फिर ये चेक हम इसलिए लगाते हैं कि we want to print the appropriate message. If the transmission is automatic, so we want के automatic transmission create हुई है, और अगर नहीं है तो we want के manual transmission create हुई है. ठीक है If it is false, then we want to say कि manual transmission create हुई है. And then again these are very simple methods के transmission कितनी gear ratios हैं, you can access that, and whether it is automatic or not you can access that. Now inside the car class, this is the default constructor of the car class. ठीक है In the default constructor we don't do anything, we just print this message कि a car with. So if you look at the declaration of the car class, it has these two attributes, engine E and transmission T, and these are objects. These are objects. So they'll be created by default. In the default constructor you do not need to create these objects explicitly. So they'll be created by default. Those attributes would be created by default. You don't need to explicitly create them. When would you need to explicitly create them? when you declare these to be as pointers, and that would be your like your task. Okay? When you declare these as pointers, now this is pointer to an engine object, and this is pointer to a transmission object. These are not the objects themselves. These are just variables that can hold the addresses to these objects. In this case, then you will do something like this. You will say E is equal to new engine. You'll create a new engine here explicitly, and you'll also create T is equal to new transmission. Okay? Why would you do that? Because now these attributes are pointers. Okay? These are not the actual objects themselves. In this particular situation, can we call this relationship as a has a relationship? Yes, it is still a has a relationship. A car has an engine and a car has a transmission. Okay? How does it accesses that engine and transmission object? That is something different. But the relationship still exists. अगर ये object हो, ठीक है, या pointer to an object हो, it is fine. ठीक है, the relation there is the has a relationship. Acha. So right now, like, let us comment these lines out. We don't want to do that. But if these are objects, which they are right now, so then you don't need to create the engine object and the transmission object. Just like, जैसे कि ये जो objects हैं, ये जो attributes हैं, displacement, it is an integer, serial number, it is an integer. You don't need to explicitly create these integer values. You just need to assign them some value if you want to do them. Otherwise, ये खुद ब खुद create हो जाते हैं. By creation, I mean कि इनको RAM में space is allocated to these variables, and there is a problem, like they have those garbage values, so you need to initialize the values, but nevertheless, like, you don't need to create them. They are created automatically. You just need to assign them some initial value at most. That is what you need to do at most. ठीक है? अच्छा जी. So when we create a car by invoking the default constructor, so you will get this message would be printed, a car with itne cc engine and manual or itne speed manual transmission, but whatever jo bhi hai, it is created. So this message would be printed, and you would see that you would get correct and valid values for these function calls. ठीक है? So उससे आपको पता चल जाएगा, verify, like you will be able to verify कि वाकई E object and T object they do exist. You have not created them explicitly, but these objects exist in memory. That is which is how you can call these functions, these member functions. इनको आप call कर सकते हैं और इनकी values आपके पास आती हैं. This is the overloaded constructor for the car class. In this constructor, we are basically providing an engine object and a transmission object to the constructor. ये engine इसमें डालें और ये transmission डालें. ठीक है? तो custom order के मुताबिक गाड़ी बन रही है. And what do we do? E attribute को we assign E1 जो हमारे पास आ रहा है. So हम इस engine को we are replacing it with E1. ठीक है? And transmission T को we are replacing it with T1. E को replace कर रहे हैं with E1, T को replace कर रहे हैं with T1. One engine is being replaced by another one. So we are basically doing a copy. ठीक है? तो हम copy constructor को यहाँ पे indirectly invoke कर रहे हैं. So here we are printing कि a car with this CC engine and this speed transmission has been created. अच्छा, for the car we have these methods, get engine size कि उसमें कितना engine लगा हुआ है, उस engine का serial number क्या है और transmission के speeds कितने हैं. So आप जो कार के जो engine attribute है उसके get displacement method को call करते हैं और उसकी get serial number method को call करते हैं और transmission के get speeds method को call करते हैं in order to return these attributes. ठीक है? अच्छा, so I hope like these implementations are clear. Now let us get to come back to the main program. Now in the main program, what are we doing? Okay? So first of all, if I comment all of this code, okay, I'm commenting all of this code. We are just creating a car object, car C. Okay? So when we create a car object, you'll see first an engine object will be created, and then a transmission object, and then the car object. Okay? So यानी इस प्रोग्राम में there is just one statement, one executable statement, that is the car, ये वाली जो statement where we are instantiating a new car object. ठीक है? So let us compile this code and let us see how does it behave. So now when you instantiate the car object, when you just write the statement car C, okay, so the first thing that you see is a 1300cc engine with serial number 1947 has been created. That means the first constructor that is executed, it is this constructor of the engine class. Why? Because here we have specified that a car has an engine and a car has a transmission, so then the constructor of the transmission class would be executed. Constructor of the transmission class. So the next thing that you see is a 5-speed manual transmission has been created. Okay? So उसके बाद ये वाला constructor execute हुआ है. A 5-speed manual transmission has been created. After that, फिर car class का constructor execute होता है. ठीक है? Which is this function. And here we only print this message, a car with itne cc engine and itne speed transmission has been created. Okay? So you can check the grammar, you can correct it later. A car with a 1300cc engine and 5-speed manual transmission is created. Now this is how you create has a relationship. Okay? This is how we create has a relationship. So a car has an engine object as an attribute and a transmission object as an attribute. So a car has a relationship with these two classes. This is how it works. Okay? It's this simple to create this relationship. Now we are going to test something more. First of all, we are going to call this function print details. What does print details do? You give it a car object and it prints the details of that car object. Okay? So one of the details that we include is कि उसका एड्रेस क्या है. ये जो ऑब्जेक्ट हमारे पास आ रहा है उसका एड्रेस क्या है, उसका engine size, engine serial number, and what are the characteristics of its transmission. So we print all these details about any car object. अच्छा जी. Now I'll comment out this part of it. ठीक है? I'll let this part remain here. ठीक है? I want to see कि whether आपको कुछ concepts clear हैं या नहीं. So let us build and run. Okay, so we explained this output. This output is the first 3 lines. This is because of this only this statement at line number 7. ठीक है? So we have explained that कि ये क्यों हो रहा है. Then we say printing details of car C, और car C का एड्रेस क्या है? It is an object and that object is stored at this address 61FE10. ठीक है? So C का एड्रेस क्या है? We are printing the address of C. C is an object and we are printing the address of C in RAM. That address is 61FE10. Then we call the print details function and we pass it the object C. अच्छा, what does the print details function do? Print details में object C जो है, it is received in object V. So that means C has to be copied into V. C has to be copied into V. There would be a call to the copy constructor. There would be a call to the copy constructor. अच्छा, how would you know कि C and V are different? आपको कैसे पता चलेगा कि V और C these are two different objects? ठीक, एड्रेस से पता चलेगा. So we do print the address of V as well. So if you look details of car object at address of V 61FDB0, this is hexadecimal address. ठीक है? These are all hexadecimal digits. So ये दोनों मुख्तलिफ हैं. That means these are two different objects. ठीक है? C की copy create की गई है and that copy is V. V is a different object. So there is a call to the copy constructor, and these characteristics or attributes are for the object V, which is a copy of C. ठीक है, दिस मच इज क्लियर. अच्छा, सो there is call to the copy constructor. There is a call to the copy constructor, and the copying takes place correctly. The copying takes place correctly. ठीक है, C की जो characteristics हैं वो V में हमें नजर आ जाती हैं. But we are going to verify it in another way as well. इसको बड़ा explicitly हम verify करेंगे. वो कैसे करेंगे? So here we are going to create a separate engine object. ये 1800 cc का engine है और इसका जो serial number है 2000 है. Let us make the serial number slightly different ये ताकि ये cc के साथ confuse ना हो. So say this is the serial number. ठीक है. Then we create a transmission automatic 8-speed automatic transmission. ठीक है. We create an 8-speed automatic transmission object. Then we create a car object, a new car object, which has engine E1 and transmission T1. So this is a custom car. ठीक है. इसके लिए हमने custom engine और custom transmission का बताया कि हमें ये वाली गाड़ी चाहिए. Then we want to print details for car C2. ठीक है, उसकी details आ जाएंगी. Then we say C is equal to C2. So we are assigning C2 to the object C. We are copying C2 into C. ठीक है, we are copying C2 into C. अच्छा, जब आप ये देखेंगे ना कि C को हम C2 में कॉपी कर रहे हैं, so you will see and we will verify कि जो engine attribute है, transmission attribute है, they are copied exactly as they are. ठीक है, यानी copying बड़ी perfect होती है, उसमें कोई मसला नहीं होता. ठीक है, let us see, let us verify that. इसको मैं हटा देता हूँ. Let us run this code and look at the output and then try to explain the output. Okay, so we have a lot of output. So this part has been explained. ठीक है, so these are the attributes for C. वो हमने details print कर दी C की. Now engine E1. So we are basically creating an 1800 cc custom engine with serial number this. Then we are creating an 8-speed manual transmission. 8-speed automatic transmission has been created. Then we are creating a car with E1 and T1 as transmission. ठीक है, अच्छा, so उसमें हमारे पास क्या हो रहा है? पहले कौन सा कंस्ट्रक्टर कॉल हो रहा है? A 1300 cc engine. अच्छा, when we create this car object C2, तो उसके जो ऑलरेडी एट्रीब्यूट्स हैं E और T, so वो डिफॉल्ट सेटिंग्स के साथ क्रिएट होते हैं. E and T they are created with the default settings. डिफॉल्ट सेटिंग्स क्या है? 1300 cc इंजन और 5 स्पीड मैनुअल ट्रांसमिशन. उसके बाद हम ओवरलोडेड कंस्ट्रक्टर में उनको रीअसाइन करते हैं E1 और T1. ठीक है, इफ यू लुक एट द ओवरलोडेड कंस्ट्रक्टर यू कैन नॉट लुक एट इट राइट नाउ. अच्छा, चलें बिजली का इंतजार कर लेते हैं थोड़ी देर.